Welcome to Payoff Pitch Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. It is Tuesday, August 19th. I'm Collin Whitchurch, joined as usual by Sean Zerillo. We're going to break down today's MLB slate, give out our best bets, favorite underdogs, and any other bets we might have on our card today. 16 games on the docket today. The Cubs and Brewers tried to play a doubleheader yesterday. It didn't work out very well. I know this for a fact. I live a couple miles from Wrigley Field. Went and took my dog out and got caught in a torrential downpour. So there was no way they were playing baseball at Wrigley last night. But yes, every other team in action, doubleheader at Wrigley today. Let's jump right into it with our best bets. Sean, I'll throw it to you first. You're going to DC, betting a pitching matchup of David Peterson versus Jake Irvin in Mets Nationals.
Yeah, I like the over here. Over 8.5, I bet last night at minus 120. I think there's some 9 minus 102s, minus 105s today. I like it all the way up to 9 at minus 115. I project the total closer to 9.65. We'll see what umpire adjustment I end up putting on this game once we get umpire announcements closer to game time, about 3 hours before game time. But Jake Irvin, a big part of this fade for me. The Mets offense, I expect to score runs tonight. Irvin has gotten worse every season of his major league career, and the velocity is down 2 full ticks since his major league debut. Sitting about 92.3 this season. He was 94.5 2 years ago, so down 2.2 miles an hour. His rest of season FIP projections, the lesser projections, view him as a replacement level starter. They have him all the way up at 5.3. More optimistic projections still think he's a number 5, have him around the high 4s, 4.6. But I think seeing the underlying indicators and the underlying indicators continue to get worse as the season goes on, definitely points to the lower end of that FIP projection, that higher number, the 525. Last 8 starts for Jake Irvin, 490 expected FIP, a 3.3% strikeout minus walk rate. He's at 7.5% on the season. So the strikeout minus walk has halved. The expected FIP has gone up another quarter run relative to his season average. So I think the Mets get runs tonight. David Peterson, too, in August has been struggling with command as well. Walk rate around 13%. He's at 8% prior to August. He's just been really lucky with home run suppression. I think pitching at Citi Field has helped him keep the ball in the yard. Last 2 years, Peterson is at an expected ERA 4.56 last year, 4.26 this year. His ERA was 2.90 last year. It's 3.30 this season. His home run to fly ball rate prior to last year was about 17%. Home run per 9 last year, or prior to last year, about 1.1 per 9 innings. Past 2 seasons, he's basically had both of those numbers, 8.6% down from 17.5%, and 0.6 home runs per 9 down from 1.15. I don't think that's necessarily sustainable. I think he's just gotten lucky over an extended period, and that's not me looking at an expected FIP or a FIP number and saying he's gotten lucky. That's the expected ERA number saying he should give it up more hard contact and balls should be leaving the yard a little bit more frequently than they have to date. Mets bullpen really struggling, Ryan Helsley in particular, since coming over. Since the deadline, Mets 15th in both expected FIP and strikeout minus walk. Their pitch modeling metrics actually grade out really well. They're first in pitching plus from their relievers over that span, 4th in body array. They're just not getting the results. And the Nats bullpen, obviously one of the worst in baseball, 30th, dead last. Expected FIP, strikeout minus walk, pitching plus, and bot ERA. They are closer to about 23rd over the past month or so. So maybe seeing a little bit better signs from the Nats bullpen. I guess you can't be 30th in the splits for every month throughout the season. At some point, you do have to pitch a little bit better. Other teams do have to pitch worse than you do, probably. But yeah, this still grades out as the worst bullpen in baseball for me. So 9.65 is where I project this total. Over 9 to minus 115. I neglected to mention, if you look at the weather, if you just look at the weather, you'll see the wind blowing in tonight. But there's rain in the forecast here. So there's going to be very, very high humidity at game time. 85%, 90% humidity at game time should increase the ball flight back, should increase batted ball distances to kind of negate that wind blowing in. So expect a weather neutral environment at Nationals Park tonight relative to how the park normally plays, which is about 6% above the major league average.
Couple big wins for the Mets there at the end of that Seattle series. Get back on track a little bit. Not just chasing the Phillies in the East, but holding off the Reds now in the NL wildcard race. So hopefully for their sake that facing the Nationals kind of kicks them into
Awaiting
gear a little bit.
MRI results on Francisco Alvarez's hand again, by the way.
Yes.
He injured his hand sliding into second base. It's the second time he's injured his hand running the bases, which is very unfortunate because he was starting to look like he was finally breaking out over the past few weeks. I'm still immensely high on Francisco Alvarez. I still think he has 40 home run upside as a catcher, just staying on the field, and the defensive issues are what's holding him back right now.
Well, they're letting him pull the ball once he came back from the minors too.
Yep.
It's he's not an all fields hitter. He went down to AAA and pulling the crap out of the ball, came back up, started just hammering the ball to the pull side, and very high on Alvarez as well.
And he actually, even while he was pulling the ball again too, he actually accidentally hit 2 home runs to the opposite field. That's like the crazy power he has. He still, even with the intention of trying to pull the ball, still flicked 2 over the right field fence. So yeah, I think the upside is immense. He's still in his young 20s. Just want to see him get a little bit better luck in terms of the injury history, and also the pitch blocking behind the plate is an actual disaster at times.
From one playoff contender against bottom feeder to another, my best bet tonight, I am going to Blue Jays Pirates, keeping things relatively simple here with a pitching matchup of Max Scherzer against Mitch Keller. I like the Blue Jays on the money line here. I should note, though, you just mentioned Francisco Alvarez's injury with the Mets. A tiny bit of concern here with Toronto. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. left last night's game with a hamstring injury. We don't know his status right now. He's supposed to get an MRI today. But with their playoff odds up in the 90s percentile-wise, I would not be shocked if they let him sit a game, regardless of if it's precautionary or not. That obviously dings Toronto's lineup. You take away their best hitter, but it's still a deep enough offense. They just got George Springer back from the injured list, and I like them in this matchup against Keller, who is starting to do that thing he loves to do, which is fade into mediocrity in the second half of the season. After the Pirates once again failed to trade him to a real baseball team at the deadline, this is actually a real thing with a long sample size, and I don't know if it's fatigue or what, but Keller has a 4.13 ERA in the first half of the season for his career, and a 5.21 ERA in the second half. If you just look at his OPS allowed by month, 683 in May, 707 in June, 756 in July, 881 in August, and then 762 in September. I think he just gets tired or something. The strikeout numbers don't dip significantly, but the walk numbers go up. He starts to falter, not pitching as deep into games. And you look at Keller's last couple of starts, those numbers start to bear fruit. Even if you want to give a bit of a pass for getting rocked by the Red Hot Brewers last time, he gave up 5 runs to the Rockies 2 starts ago. In general, just giving up a lot more runs, not pitching as deep into games. On the other side, Max Scherzer is someone I've looked to fade quite a bit this season when he's getting priced like the ace that he is not anymore. But I think he's found a good feel for entering this wily veteran stage of his career. He's making his way through starts solidly, even without elite strikeout stuff. His last 4 starts, he's gone at least 6 innings each time, allowed more than 2 runs just once. And that one time was a start against the Tigers where he took a dip in the fountain of youth and somehow struck out 11 batters. He's been doing it against good offenses too. 4 of his last 5 starts have been against the Cubs, Dodgers, Tigers, and Yankees. Today he gets to face one of the worst offenses in the league in Pittsburgh. So even potentially with Vlad Jr. sitting, I think the Blue Jays have the Pirates way overmatched today. I bet the Blue Jays at minus 145. I think that's a strong bet all the way, about minus 160 or so.
Yeah, I like that. I lean over in that game. I'm expecting Vlad out. I projected Vlad out of the lineup. My lineup people also have Vlad out of the lineup. They have Ty France hitting 9th tonight. I make that total, though, closer to 8.5. You can get some 8s at even money. I'm just waiting to see if it goes down to 7.5 because it did open 8.5 and go down. I assume with the expectation that Vlad will be out of the lineup. I think this could be the buyback price on that game, though, in the over. Just my hesitation is Scherzer looked really good in his last start. I know you said he's no longer ace Max Scherzer. Watching him in his last start, it felt like vintage Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
So I do have some pause that he's just going to cut down the Pirates lineup tonight and not give up anything. And the Jays win 5-1, 5-2, 6-2, or 5-1, 5-2, and the over 8 does not push or hit. But yeah, I definitely lean over in that game, even with Vlad expected to be out. I'll see if I end up firing on that. That's the closest bet to being a bet for me that I have not placed as of yet.
Let's move on to our underdog section, or today we call it the unders, dog section, because Sean, you don't have any plus money dogs you like today, so we will pivot a little bit. I do have a plus money dog that I'll get to, But we're going to go with your favorite under on the slate today. It is in Miami. Cardinals, Marlins, Michael McGreevy, Edward Cabrera.
Yeah, it's funny that this is the game I decided to stick in this section. The Cardinals are the underdog that I'm closest to being bettable for me. I make them about plus 120. The line is currently plus 130. It came up from plus 125, open plus 120. If that gets to plus 133, I'll bet the Cardinals. Other underdogs, Guardians at plus 108, plus 110, Mariners at plus 165, currently plus 158. I think those are the three that I'm keeping an eye on. I just want to see how the market moves throughout the day, how the lineups end up coming out. But those are the three I would probably target. Cards at plus 133, Guards at plus 108, Mariners at plus 165. In terms of this Cardinals and Marlins matchup, we got some CLV on the under yesterday. Marlins bullpen ended up imploding it. Do feel about as good, though, about Edward Cabrera as I do about Yuri Perez. Edward Cabrera in the midst of his own breakout this year. Since May 1st, you give him some time coming off. He had a late start to the spring, I believe, ended up rehabbing. Give him, April to get back into the groove. Since May, Edward Cabrera has a 2.6 ERA, a 3.4 expected FIP, a 19% strikeout minus walk rate, and a 108 pitching plus rating. Every single metric for the season for him is in career best territory. 102 location plus. He was at 96 for his career. 8% walk rate. He's about 12% for his career. Zone rate up 5% to a career high. And first pitch strike rate also up about 4% to a career high. And what's really interesting, so the command, obviously career best for Cabrera, his velocity is also up relative to his career too. And his stuff plus rating is at a career best number. I think his average velocity for his career is around 96.2. He's at 96.9 this season. The fastball usage, though, has been dialed back, and the fastball grades out technically as his worst pitch. It's not a bad fastball, but relative to the rest of his arsenal, I think it's like a 93, 94 stuff plus. So if you're going to throw the fastball less and going to throw pitches that grade out better more, your stuff plus rating will just naturally go up. And I think he's at 104 this season versus 102 for his career. So rest of season projections, especially if you're looking at pitch modeling metrics from Oopsie. Oopsie has him at a 366 the rest of the way. Every other projection is between 3.9 and 4.2. I think that Oopsie and that outlier number and the numbers that are more comparable to what he's actually doing are the actual measurements of what Edward Cabrera is right now. I think even that 3.4 expected FIP since May may be what he is, as opposed to that 366, FIP projection from Oopsie. So I'm all in on Edward Cabrera and the improvements he's made. Teams, I'm sure, were trying to buy him at the trade deadline, and the Marlins probably put a pretty high price tag on him. Now, the other side of this matchup is Michael McGreevy for the Cardinals, who you look at the stuff numbers and they're very unimpressive. He doesn't have a single pitch that grades over 100 and stuff plus. I think his best pitch is like a 98. He's got a couple in the 90s and then a bunch in the 80s in terms of stuff plus rating. So everything grades out technically below average. My comp, though, for Michael McGreevy, Collin, and you're going to like this one if you're a fan of baseballs in the 2010s and the early 2000s, you will know this name. My comp on Michael McGreevy is a former Cardinal, Kyle Loesch.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent command, mid stuff. Kyle Loesch at his peak ran walk rates 4.5%, 4%, 6.4% for his career, but his career strikeout minus walk was about 8.5%. His career expected FIP about 4.4. I think McGreevy is a guy who has a high floor and a very low ceiling, and you're going to get good command from him in every start. If teams are able to pounce on those pitches, he could get hit, but he's going to give you an honest effort each time out. 111 location plus rating is tied for second among starting pitchers behind only Chris Paddock with Nick Pivetta and Paul Skeens. He has the same command profile as Nick Pivetta and Paul Skeens, just with much lesser stuff, but he also does not give up hard contact either. 79th percentile in barrel rate, 99th percentile in walk rate. He's a very interesting pitcher, high floor, low ceiling. I think somebody to watch going forward and somebody you can probably bet as an underdog against good teams just because you know what you're going to get from him. I make this total about 7.25. I like the under 8, and I would take it down to 7.5 at even money. And hopefully the Marlins bullpen or the Cardinals bullpen do not implode on us late again here and end up collapsing this one. 9th inning loss there yesterday. 9th inning loss in the Red Sox and Orioles game, which I'll be going back to today, but on a different side. And hopefully we get a little bit more kind bullpen luck today, because yesterday was not too fun.
You know, there's nothing I love more to do on this podcast than remembering some guys. So just taking a trip down memory lane with Kyle Lohse. 16-year career for Kyle Lohse. Yep. You mentioned him with the Cardinals. He did spend 5 years there. I actually remember him best with the Twins at the beginning of his career.
Sure.
Probably because he was facing the White Sox all the time. But definitely a throwback guy. 2001 to 2016. Never struck out more than 6 batters per 9. And had a 16-year career. Different era, right?
I think that's McGreevy. I really do. I think McGreevy's like the same dude. And that, like, seeing a 3% walk rate, this deep into a major league sample is very impressive. 111 location plus, very impressive. But we'll see how the stuff holds up against major league hitters. If he's able to, he throws like 7 different pitches. So he's mixing and matching. But among guys who have that type of profile, that normally that profile is as a number 5 starter, right? You throw 7 different pitches, none of them are good. Okay, let's see what you can go out there and do. But if you pair that with elite command, now you're talking about a number 3 instead of a number 5. So yeah, I think actually like a very interesting dude to watch going forward, especially with the Cardinals so in need of young pitching. They have dudes who are near MLB level, Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence. I'm not sure about the health status of either of those guys at the moment, but they have a young position player group. They seem to be not ahead of schedule this year, but like showing signs of life for 2026. And if you can give them some decent pitching, if they go out and make some interesting free agent signings, and if the Cubs lose Tucker, the Brewers take a step back next year, you're talking about the vision being in play for the Cardinals in 2026. So definitely keep an eye on this Cardinals team. I think they have pieces to be interesting next year.
2012 is last year in St. Louis. Kyle Lohse threw 211 innings, went 16-3. Struck out just 143 batters, finished 7th in NL Cy Young voting. It was the only year. Never made an All-Star game. Only year he garnered any award votes. Age 33 season, finished 7th in NL Cy Young. I hope McGreevy's the next Kyle Lohse. Thank you for allowing me to indulge myself with a look at some obscure mid-2000s pitchers.
Yeah, we'll try to remember some more dudes on this podcast whenever possible.
It's a lot of fun. I hope our listeners enjoy it as much as I do, but honestly, I don't care. All right, from your favorite under to my favorite underdog, I am going to Athletics Twins tonight. Joe Ryan has made 3 starts since the Twins traded all his best friends. He's done his damnedest to keep his team in games. Minnesota's 2-1 in his starts in August. He's gone 17 2/3 combined innings, struck out 16, allowed just 3 walks and 4 runs allowed. So he's done everything he can for a Twins team that honestly hasn't been as bad as people thought they would be after they traded so many people away. They're obviously not a good team, but Ryan's been a really good pitcher for a few years now. His one kryptonite has always been the long ball. A ton of his runs allowed come via the dinger. When the opposing team can lift the ball in the air, it's generally when it spells trouble for him. He's done a solid job in that department of late. He allowed 32 home runs in 2023. That number shrank a little bit in 135 innings last year. This year, he's reached 4 more innings than last year, and he's allowed 3 fewer homers. The thing is, Ryan still allows a ton of balls in the air. His fly ball percentage has dipped a little bit over the last 2 years, but it's still 64%. Today, he faces an offense that is more reliant on home runs than just about any other team in baseball. A number of years ago, when he was still at Baseball Prospectus, Joe Sheehan created a stat called the Guillen number, named after former White Sox manager Ozzie Guillen. The fact that his teams were so reliant on home runs despite a narrative that his teams played small ball. The Guillen number is simple. Number of runs a team scores via the home run. How much of your offense is a product of home runs? Do you want to guess who the number 1 team in baseball this year is in Guillen number? It's not the Athletics, Sean. Do you have a guess?
Yankees was my guess.
Oh, no, it's the Mariners, actually. The Mariners have a Guillen number of 49.6%. 282 of their 569 runs scored have been via the home run. That's as of Sunday. This doesn't include yesterday's games just yet. Right behind them are the Athletics. 48.6% of their runs scored have been via the home run. They're going to hit the ball in the air today. The wind is blowing out a little bit to right field at Target Field tonight. I think they put some runs up against Ryan via the long ball. The other side of the matchup features Jacob Lopez, who's been really solid, kind of out of nowhere for the A's this year. I'm buying him at the high end of his peak right now after 14 innings of shutout ball with 19 strikeouts in his last 2 starts against the Rays and Nationals. But today he faces a Twins offense that has been absolutely putrid against left-handed pitching, particularly since trading half their team at the deadline. They have a 69 weighted runs created plus against lefties this month, ahead of only the Giants. And on the season, they're still below average overall, about 8% below average against lefties. The Twins are not a good team. They haven't been as terrible since the deadline, as I mentioned. I think that a lot of but even if Joe Ryan avoids the long ball today, they're still going to be trotting out an array of journeymen and quad A guys behind him in the bullpen. So I like the value on betting the A's as underdogs today. I think that the line is an indication of Joe Ryan versus Jacob Lopez, which the Twins obviously do have the starting pitching advantage. I just don't think it's as stark as the number suggests, so I like backing the A's today at plus 120 or better.
There's literally an article on Fangraphs as of 25 minutes ago with the headline, Jacob Lopez is doing a credible Chris Sale impression. So go check that out. Michael Rosen wrote that. Yeah, I've watched each of those starts for Lopez. He has been ultra impressive. I think he changed his arm angle and he's taken off. I don't think it was a pitch mix change. I think it was an arm angle change, and hence the Chris Sale impression comparison. So yeah, definitely looking forward to reading that and seeing specifically what the breakout cause has been for Jacob Lopez, but he's a pitcher I would buy going forward, and especially pitching away from his home park should continue to thrive.
Fascinating trade last winter. Going to see how that plays out between two teams that just do weird stuff with Jacob Lopez and Jeffrey Springs went to the A's. Joe Boyle went to Tampa along with 2 minor leaguers. Joe Boyle, obviously, I'm a fan of his as well, and his ability to miss bats. Before we move on to our final segment of the show, a quick reminder that football season is here, folks. In fact, week 0 of college football season is this Saturday. If you're in the Chicago area, the BBOC crew is going to be having a watch party for college football this Saturday. I'm going to be there, not because I'm a college football expert, but because I live in Chicago and I want to hang out with Stuckey, Collin Wilson, and the crew, have some drinks, watch some college football. With football season officially here, though, we've got some huge improvements and updates coming on the award-winning Action Network app, which we're very excited to discuss in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, you'll still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from Sean Zerillo, the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you get access to pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, plus a ton of other benefits. And right now, Action Network podcast listeners can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use code PAYOFF20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use code PAYOFF20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. And yeah, this Saturday at Joe's on Weed in Chicago, I'm going to try to get the bartenders to turn at least one game on baseball. Red Sox Yankees play at noon. I'll get the White Sox and Cubs games on there somewhere. So we'll have a good time there. Let's get into our final bets of the show, though. We actually have quite a bit. At least I do. I'll start us off here, Sean, because I'm really curious what your thoughts are. This is kind of the game of the day. Astros Tigers, Hunter Brown against Tarek Skubal. And I'm going with a contrarian play here. I'm betting the over, a 7. Neither of these guys have really looked like themselves of late. Skubal's velocity was down a little bit last time out against the Twins. The start before that, he got tagged for some long balls by the Angels. After practically walking no one the first half of the season, he's now walked 2 or more batters in 3 of his last 4 starts. Brown has shown less warts of late, but he's not missing as many bats as he did earlier in the season either. This isn't really a fatigue thing with these guys. These guys have now, I know they're still young aces, but these guys have hit these innings limits before. It's not like these are guys getting in the 170s innings for the first time all year. So I'm not actually super concerned about either guy, but I think this is just kind of natural regression for 2 uber aces to putting up numbers that are a little bit more human. They're still 2 of maybe the 5 best pitchers on the planet. They're just fallible as well, and they've shown it the last couple times out. The primary reason for this contrarian bet, though, is that behind these guys are 2 very sketchy bullpens, and that's actually the main reason. The Astros, without Josh Hader, pushing all their guys up on the leverage scale a little bit, they're severely hampered. It hurts them to have Brian Abreu tied to the closer role if that's what they end up doing, with Hader out. The Tigers' bullpen has been a mess since their downswing started a few weeks ago. Will Vest isn't what he was earlier in the year. When Kyle Finnegan, traded for at the deadline, is your most reliable bullpen arm, that's a problem. Last night, I bet the over on this game. The Tigers hit it all by themselves in a much less appealing pitching matchup of Jack Flaherty against Spencer Arrighetti. It was 10-0 Tigers. So Flaherty actually, I'm really glad that I didn't try to fade Flaherty last night for the first time in a while, because he reared back and dialed up some nonsense that we haven't seen from him basically all year. But this tonight with this elite pitching matchup at 7, I think that's understandable given that it's Tarek Skubal, Hunter Brown. But I think these offenses have enough juice to get to either of these guys a little bit, or the bullpens. I don't trust either bullpen. I know Houston's bullpen was good a lot, in the middle of the season, but without Hader, I think that they're hamstrung a little bit, and I don't trust Detroit's bullpen at all right now. So over 7, contrarian play on the game of the day. Real quick, Sean, do you have any thoughts on this game?
So my only thought is I'm not sure how contrarian it is. Looking at our betting splits right now on Sports Insights, it actually has like 85% of the tickets and the cash on the over.
Oh,
and
wow.
It triggered an Action Lab system for contrarian unders for winning teams. Now, I make this total, and it's tough to trust the bet splits in the morning.
Yeah.
More so like I trust them later in the day, closer to game time. I think that's when there's enough volume in there that you can kind of like look at the number. And I don't really look at bet splits a ton, but in terms of like looking for contrarian sides, or trying to see what side of a matchup I might be on relative to a book, I think you can analyze it, but I would typically do it closer to game time. Now, in terms of my projection, there is very high humidity at Comerica Field today, rain in the forecast, and like 95% humidity. So this game and this park, which normally is a pitcher's park, normally plays, I want to say like 5 to 8% below the league average. It's 6%. You can upgrade it more than 10% today for the weather. And then you also have Carlos Torres, who's one of my most hitter-friendly umpires behind the dish. Now, does a hitter-friendly umpire remain a hitter-friendly umpire when you have two of the best pitchers in baseball on the mound? I don't have the evidence to tell you that offhand. I'm actually very curious to see how Carlos Torres handles close pitches tonight with two guys who are established aces on the hill. Now, Skubal's biggest issue, as you said, the velocity down in the last start, it's really been the glove side command for him. You can see it. It's very evident with the fastballs. If you've watched Skubal in the past, you just know how smooth he is. And like, he's always getting ahead. He always has hitters in pitchers' counts, and he's always comfortable. His last start, he was behind 2-1, 3-1 in every count because every glove side fastball he tried to throw was like 3-4 inches wide of the zone. He just couldn't hit his target, but he was consistent. He was just consistently off the zone. So it is like a slight command thing he's going through right now that I would imagine he talked about it after the start. I'd imagine he's worked on his mechanics to try to correct it, because it really is just like mostly glove side fastball command. And as a result, he wasn't able to get a slider buried down and in where he wanted to either. I think he'll be fine provided the velo comes back. But yeah, I do lean the same direction as you here. I lean over 7. Unfortunately, the juice now on the 7 is moved up from I think closer to plus money to minus 115. I'm not sure what the price you got on the 7 was, Collin. I would bet it at over 7 at plus money. It's a pass for me at the current juice. But as to your point about the bullpens, if you get some early low, if the run scoring is low early here, if it's 0-0 through 3, 1
Live bet
through 3, yeah, exactly. This is a game that you could potentially live bet while the starting pitchers are in the game. As I said, the humidity is going to be astronomical tonight. These dudes are going to be sweating bullets, and their butts are going to be soggy. And by the 4th or 5th inning, these dudes are going to be just pouring out sweat and likely gassing out a little bit. So I think the humidity is actually the biggest factor here, and the potential exhaustion of these pitchers by the 5th or 6th inning. And then you could probably live bet into it if there hasn't been that many runs to that point.
I love that the under is actually the contrarian play here. I should have looked at that. You'd assume Brown against Skubal, the public's going to be all over the under. And the humidity is a really good point too. You say to yourself like, oh, Hunter Brown should be used to that. He pitches in Houston. Have you been in Daikin Field in the summer? They close that roof and they crank that AC. It is not humid in there for him in the summer. So very exciting.
This is some pit stain weather in Detroit tonight, and these dudes are going to be going through it, I think, by the 5th inning.
Yeah, very exciting pitching matchup for sure. And Jason Benetti brought up a good point on the broadcast last night. This is a big series for the Tigers because they don't hold a tiebreaker against pretty much any other of the teams that they're competing for a bye or number
Mm,
one seed with. But if they win this series against Houston, they will have a tiebreaker over Houston.
okay.
So they need that for that sake, for seeding purposes, home field advantage. The
Resting their
first round bye.
bullpen, not overusing their bullpen in the playoffs.
Exactly. But
Resting
I wouldn't,
Skubal.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see Scooble Brown face off again in
Yeah.
ALDS, maybe the ALCS. That AL Central, that AL Cy Young race, by the way, is getting pretty interesting. Scooble's down to, he was like minus 700 at one point. Crochet's down to plus 200. Scooble's minus 250. So, a couple more duds from Scooble, and Crochet keeps dealing like he has. He could steal it from him.
Absolutely.
That's a
Yeah, I
race
think I have
now.
Crochet K leader. I don't have him Cy Young, but I think his K leader and I think strikeout leader was a better number than AL Cy Young, which is why I took that for Crochet. So hopefully he can get one of those to the window. I have Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber most ribbies at like huge numbers. So I've got some categories to sweat here down the stretch.
Yeah. Crochet with a 6 strikeout lead on Scooble. So Scooble gets 6 or more today. He'll be tied with him. Wheeler's in second, but obviously Wheeler's out for a little
Yeah.
while now. So
Mm-hmm.
it's basically Crochet versus Scooble for that strikeout lead.
Schwarber at 103 RBI. I said it was one of my favorite bets at the start of the season just because of the lineup spot switch. So I'm really, really, really hoping that one comes through because I know a lot of people bet that and it was a big number. So Schwarber RBI leader is the thing I'm rooting for hardest at the moment for the people.
All right, some more final bets here. Sean, I'll let you talk real quick. We do have one afternoon game today. Cubs Brewers game 1 is at 2:20 Eastern if you're listening to this before that. Sean, you fired a bet in the app this morning. The line has moved out of range, you say, though, but I just want to let you speak on that briefly.
Yeah, I actually fired this one last night, and at the time that I bet it, only 3 books had a number up. FanDuel was at minus 124, Caesars was at minus 135, and MGM had just opened up a minus 130. I make this game about minus 160, and I was staring at it, and there was also a line out for game 2, I should say, by the way, at that point. So I was like, no value on game 2, and I'm staring at this line for game 1 going, what am I missing? I don't know. Let's just bet it. I put an initial price target of minus 135 in the app because I was like, if you can't get the minus 124, take the minus 135. But I then upgraded it to minus 145 as my cutoff price, considering I make this game about minus 160 for the Cubs with Matt Boyd going against Chad Patrick. I do give the Cubs a starting pitching edge. Obviously, their offense has been flat while the Brewers have been surging. I brought it up yesterday on the show. I think over the past 30 days, the Cubs are like 27th or 28th in WRC plus, and Milwaukee is second. So a huge differential lately in performance by these offenses. The bullpen, slight edge for Milwaukee as well. I do give the Cubs a defensive advantage, though, and I think they are hopefully likely to break back out offensively at some point. They just have too many dudes who take so many pitches and should be able to grind down opposing pitching staffs. Hopefully they get a lead, and then hopefully the Brewers reallocate their best relievers to the second game of this doubleheader behind Brandon Woodruff. So not a ton of value on this bet at this point. I think it has jumped all the way up to minus 155, but it is just a reminder that we bet numbers and not teams here. And despite the fact that I expect the Cubs to fall flat on their faces as favorites today against a red hot Brewers team, I still had to take the value that I saw in the line. And it seems like the market obviously agreed with that sentiment, pouring in the steam against Milwaukee. But yeah, Chicago up to minus 145 for this afternoon, assuming they have their regular lineup in there, which after doubleheader, afternoon, day yesterday, and then the night end got canceled, that I would anticipate they have their A lineup in again this afternoon.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they do with now they've got Owen Casey up, trying to give him some reps. They're benching Ian Happ a little bit more as he's been cold. Did you know Kyle Tucker doesn't have an extra base hit in the month of August? It's August 19th. He is 8 for 54 this month. All 8 hits have been singles. 148, 233, 148 split.
Yeah, they put up a graphic yesterday. His poll percentage, I think since May or through May, it was like 30% in on the ground, and since May it's been like 55%. He just can't get the ball in the air anymore. He clearly needs to adjust his swing path because everything is on the ground and he's not hitting for extra bases. It seemed like he was on his way to a career year, through the first couple months of the year and then fell flat on his face. Same with PCA as well. So I don't know what happened to this Cubs offense. It looked like maybe the best in the National League for a large part of the season. And since then, they have just been one of the worst in baseball. It's kind of a bizarre turnaround. You would expect a team who takes pitches like that to have a pretty high floor, and they've been abysmal.
Yeah, PCA's on base percentage dipped below 300. We're talking about MVP candidates. It's hard to imagine an MVP with an OBP below 300. But he's got that profile, where you wonder how the league's going to adjust to him next year. Just start to learn. Just never throw this guy a strike, and he's gonna whiff at your sliders. But obviously, still having a great season. Kyle Tucker's really interesting. His free agency this year is going to be really interesting. Matthew Trueblood wrote a really good piece in Baseball Prospectus about his swing change and about how there might be some lingering injury, shoulder, arm, something that's forced him to swing the way he has. Not bad enough to miss time, but bad enough to where he's not able to get the loft in the ball that he has. But yeah, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you'd have looked at this 5-game series in Wrigley and said, wow, this is the series of the year. The Brewers have the biggest division lead in baseball now. After yesterday's game, it's 9. They have a bigger lead over the Cubs than the Tigers have over the Guardians. But yeah, obviously the Cubs can get a sweep today. That would make things a little bit more interesting. But the Brewers are just insane juggernauts. I've got a trio of pitching props to close out my card. I will start with Braves White Sox. If you had over 1.5 White Sox references on this podcast from me, go ahead and cash your ticket. We saw Chicago's offense lay waste to Spencer Strider last night. Boy, I don't know what's going on with Strider. Very concerning. Tonight they face Bryce Elder, who's been okay for Atlanta at times, while still being a very risky starting pitcher to back. He's very number 5. You're never super confident when Elder's on the mound. I frequently bet the unders on pitcher strikeouts against the White Sox this year. So this team doesn't strike out a bunch relative to how bad the team is as a whole. But tonight I'm zagging. I'm betting the over on Elder strikeouts at 4.5. The White Sox strike out at one of the lowest rates in MLB against lefties, but against righties, we're seeing that number climb in the second half of the season as some of these rookies get more playing time. Edgar Caro, Kyle Teal, Colson Montgomery, who's just hitting a homer every other night. But they strike out at the 9th most frequently against righties since the trade deadline. I think it's 12th overall on the season against right-handed pitching. Elder, as I mentioned, very shaky starting pitcher, but we saw him strike out 6 Mets last week. He got to 5 against the Reds about 2 weeks ago. The Braves are also going to need length tonight. I know they don't have anything to play for. Neither of these teams have anything to play for. But the Braves have one of the worst bullpens in baseball. They had to go to their bullpen in the 3rd inning last night when Strider got knocked out. So I think regardless of how Elder pitches, they're going to let him go into the 5th, 6th, maybe even 7th inning. So even if he's ineffective, he's got to get out somehow. The White Sox strike out a lot against right-handed pitching, so over 4.5 seems like a good number on Elder. I got that about minus 115. Sean, you've got a couple more totals that you're playing. We will go to, you mentioned Baltimore-Boston. Tough beat for you in the 9th inning last night on an under. Tonight, really gross pitching matchup. Sagano against Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler, one of my favorite pitchers to fade this year. Tell us how you're betting this pitching matchup tonight.
Yeah, more cool weather in Boston tonight, like it was yesterday. Just 67 degrees in Boston tonight. And as a result, I bet the over 9.5 last night. I thought there was a chance it might go down, despite where I projected the number. It did. You can get 9 minus 115 now, as opposed to 9.5 at plus money. I like this all the way up to 9.5 at minus 115. Good pitching weather does not save pitchers with bad command. That is the philosophy here. Walker Buehler, over his past 12 starts, has 35 walks and 36 strikeouts, a 0.4% strikeout minus walk rate, a 6.22 ERA, and a 5.6 expected FIP over that span. Prime Walker Buehler is probably never coming back unless his shoulder miraculously recovers after an extra offseason of rest. The velocity is just too far down. The stuff is just too far down relative to where he was previously to anticipate that there is going to be just such a significant resurgence and recovery. It's very reminiscent, actually, of Noah Syndergaard, how the velo started slowly disappearing from Syndergaard, and teams kept signing him and trotting him out there. And you're like, this is not the same guy. And then before you know it, Noah Syndergaard has gone from throwing 100 to throwing 90 miles an hour. And you're like, this is sad to watch. And it's starting to get to that point with Walker Buehler. He's not throwing 90, but he used to throw 97. Now he's throwing 94. And the stuff plus has gone down from 117 to 107, now 97 this year. Yeah, as I said, he used to throw 95.8 was his previous level, I think 2 years ago. Now he's down to 94.1 this year. So Walker Buehler, I think, is one of the worst guys going at the moment, who's still continuing to get trotted out there. 4.9 expected FIP, 5.65 expected ERA, like replacement level territory pretty clearly. And as I said, the walks have only come up as the season has gone along. Tamayuki Sugano for the Orioles has maintained a low 4 ERA, but his expected metrics say he's closer to a replacement level arm as well. 4.7 expected FIP, 5.65 expected ERA, a low BABIP, a high strand rate. I think both of those are due to regress. Projection systems generally agree too. His highest projections closer to 5.5, the average about 4.9 on his rest of season FIP. So I think these are two number 5 starters, arguably, potentially number 6 starters going at it here in good pitching weather, but two guys who are potential, or who have the potential to put a lot of runners on base via the walk. And then hopefully, despite the cooler weather, we get some hard contact to drive those runners in. Orioles offense is actually hitting. They haven't hit for a large part of the year. Last 30 days, up to 11th in WRC plus, running a 106. And Boston's bullpen too has been a disaster since the trade deadline. I don't know if they're just getting tired or going through a rough stretch, but since the deadline, 29th in expected FIP, 26th in strikeout minus walk. The pitch modeling metrics still have them as a top 3 unit, but the results have been a disaster. I make, as I said, this total about 10.1, so the over 9.5 to minus 115. And obviously, if you can get that over 9, I would take that instead. And if you can get an over 9 to minus 120, I would prefer that to an over 9.5 at even money. You can take the minus 120 instead of the 9.5 at even money. But then past that point, past the 20-cent differential, start to take the over 9.5 at plus, as opposed to the laying the juice on the over 9.
Yeah, Orioles, for all of their issues, they're at least giving us something interesting to watch the rest of the year. We got Samuel Basayo came up recently, top catching prospect. Dylan Beavers had a decent night last night. So, yeah, they're starting to hit. Jordan Westberg left yesterday's game with an injury. That guy hasn't been able to stay healthy all year. Been one of their best bats when he's been in the lineup. But
Mayo's been hitting a little bit. So, yeah, it's nice to see their kids finally getting playing time altogether. But unfortunately, just like the player development hasn't been what we expected for Baltimore. So, and the pitching is just such a dire need for 2026. Like, I don't know how they get the pitching staff in a competitive place for next year, given the current state it's in, right?
it is so incredibly. You can cash the over 2.5 now. It's so incredibly White Sox Pete coded. What's happened to this young offensive core? It's like, oh, we've got Moncada, we've got Eloy, we've got Robert, we've got Tim Anderson, and then it just, we've got Gunnar Henderson, we've got Adley Rutschman, we've got Jackson Holiday, and it just hasn't worked out. I'm really interested to see what
Grayson Rodriguez, it's there's a lot of comps you can make between those two teams.
Justin Verlander said that he wants to pitch next year, and I heard someone say that he just needs to complete his circuit of the teams with orange as the primary color and take the Charlie Morton deal in Baltimore next year.
Love that.
All right, this is probably the longest daily episode of this podcast we've had. I've got 2 more bets to get to. Sean's got 1 more. Our producer David is rolling his eyes somewhere probably. I'm on Emmett Sheehan. Under 15.5 outs tonight against the Colorado Rockies. This is wild to me. This is one of those, what am I missing kind of things. Like, should I actually be zagging because I don't understand this? 15.5 outs for Emmett Sheehan today. He has not recorded an out in the 6th inning in any of his starts yet this year. I get it. He's facing the Rockies, but this is not the rollover and play dead Rockies offense that we saw for most of the first half of the year. We saw last night they had a walk-off win against these Dodgers. They've won 4 straight. The Dodgers also didn't use a lot of their bullpen last night behind Yamamoto, even though the loss. They threw 2 pitchers for an inning each, I think. Justin Wroblewski. I'm forgetting who else. But this team is still in the playoff race. They're only 2 games ahead of San Diego. They're going to be playing these games a little bit more seriously than you would expect the Dodgers and Dave Roberts to take the regular season when he's throwing out, their 7th best bullpen arm in key games in September because, the postseason's all that matters for LA. That's still true. No one's thinking that the Dodgers are going to miss the playoffs, but they do, want to win the NL West. I think we're going to see them put forth a little bit more effort, and I think that means rolling out the bullpen behind Emmett Sheehan. I don't think Dave Roberts simply lets him see a lineup a third time right now. He's protecting him very much. So he hasn't pitched more than 5 innings in any start this year. 15.5 under right now, heavily juiced to -150, but I still like it because I think it's being priced. I think this line is being set like the Rockies are the worst team in baseball. And the Rockies are the worst team in baseball, but they're not historically bad like they were earlier this year. So under
And to
15
start
and
the
a half
Coors,
outs.
not in Dodger Stadium. Like in Dodger Stadium, I'd be like, meh, maybe. But
Yeah,
at Coors,
exactly. Yeah.
At Coors, like the potential that he just gets knocked out naturally, before completing his pitch count is like significantly higher. So yeah, that seems seems like somebody knows something that we don't, setting that at 15 and a half.
Exactly. That's my only hesitance on betting it, but I'm just like, no, I gotta bet the under on his outs there. So if he gets an out in the 6th inning today, I will be surprised. All right, I'm going to give out my one last pitching prop, and then Sean will get to your last total, and then we have Grant Neiffer on deck for Dinger Tuesday, which I know everyone's waiting for. My final bet will be really quick. Kai Tang for the Giants tonight against the Padres and Nick Pivetta. I have Tang as a sub-replacement level arm. Everything that he's shown at this point in his career is that he's exactly that. He's made just 3 appearances and 2 starts this year, and he appeared in 4 games in relief last year. 21 total innings at the major league level, 16 walks. His one good outing this year, he was a bulk guy against the Nationals, walked just 1 in 5 innings, but he walked 3 in 3 innings against the Mets, 4 in 1 2/3 innings against these very same Padres just 6 days ago. We're betting high juice again here, but they are giving us the walk number at 1.5 instead of 2.5, which I'm very excited about. So I love over 1.5 walks for Kai Tang today at -180. Sean, Guardians, Diamondbacks. We saved the West Coasters for last. I was on Giants, Padres. You're on Guardians, Diamondbacks. Last bet of the day. Go.
Yeah, I think Eduardo Rodriguez has been a bit unlucky this season, and as a result, I think there's some value on the under here. Opening at 9, I liked it to -112. I projected closer to 8.5. I think, the one thing I want to point out in Erod's profile that I think is interesting, and then one thing about the Guardians as well, his ground ball rate is at a career low, but his pop-up rate is also at a career high. He's a guy who has a pop-up profile, typically a fly ball lean, but a lot of those fly balls are allocated into pop-ups. He actually has the highest pop-up rate in baseball. His pop-up rate, as I said, is a career high, but his home run rate is also a career high. Career high 1.65 per 9 innings. I think he's just been a little bit unlucky with the long ball. And then also looking at the BABIP and the strain rate, 352 BABIP, 308 career, 69% strain rate, 74% career. He's giving up more home runs than he should. Batting average on ball and play is higher than it should be, so he's giving up more base hits than he should. And he's stranding fewer runners than he should based on career historic. So I think Eduardo Rodriguez in 3 different facets has just been wildly unlucky this season, and the change in batted ball profile does not give me any concern, considering all of those are really just going into pop-ups. The Cleveland defense, I think, is the other interesting aspect of this under. They actually do not rate well at all on the season by defensive metrics. 10th in defensive runs saved, 19th and below average, like in the negatives in outs above average. But in terms of my model for today's game, for today's slate, they're the number 1 defensive team on the board for me. I don't know what has gone on with their defensive metrics this year. Normally, they are one of the best defensive teams in the sport. They are playing much better of lately. There really hasn't been a change in personnel that would indicate to me this team is suddenly better defensively. But as I said, there's 3-4 teams that I would kind of consider or grade out as elite defensive teams: Toronto, Houston, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, based upon my measurements defensively for today and these current lineups that these teams have. Cleveland ranks the best among them. So I just find it fascinating that they've performed so poorly defensively on the year, but still project as my top defensive team, which has not been the case all year. This is kind of, come into play recently. So yeah, under 9 to -112, even -115, -118. I like this under as we wrap up this Tuesday slate. And I'll see if I add any of those underdogs that I mentioned or the Jays over that I alluded to before.
Be sure to follow Sean in the Action app. Get pick alerts as he adds bets throughout the day. We just gave you 11 bets on these 16 games. Got a couple more on deck. So before we get out of here, let's toss it over to Grant Neiffer of Scores and Odds to bring us some of his favorite home run props from this Dinger Tuesday.
Thanks, guys. All right, we got Dinger Tuesday. That means a 50% profit boost over on FanDuel. I'm doing a 3-leg parlay, 118-1 odds when it's boosted. Starting off with the first leg, Big Meat Pete, plus 320, boosted up to plus 380 in the parlay. Gets a matchup versus Urban, who's been crushed so far by the long ball. Been a little bit better versus righties and lefties, but still giving up a 1.4 home run per 9 on the season. Weather mediocre for hitting, but Big Meat Pete has been fantastic this month. 6 bombs already. Odds just far too high here. Next up, Nicholas Kurtz. Kurtz has been one of the best home run hitters in the league this season. One of the best players in the league this season. And he's going up versus a gas cannon, Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan has been crushed by lefty power in his career and been bad this year. Massive fly ball rate. Weather over in Minnesota, pretty solid today. Low 80s. Wind blowing out to right about 5 miles an hour. Decent humidity. Kurtz getting him at plus 290 is a bit too high considering the matchup. I'm rolling with it. And lastly, Corey Seager plus 400. Far too high odds given the matchup. I do not love the ballpark, obviously. Kansas City, tough ballpark, 4 bombs. But gets a matchup versus Lugo, who's been crushed by lefty power this season. Over 2 home runs per 9. The weather pretty decent for hitting. Temperatures near 90 during game time. Decent humidity. Wind is blowing in, but overall, good hitting environment. Seager at plus 400, just far too high odds, given how bad Lugo has been versus lefties this season. Parlay them all together. Use that boost. 118-1 odds. I'm out of here. Oh,
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets from today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app. Leave us that 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description of this podcast for that as well. We'll be back on Friday for more MLB Best Bets. For Sean Zerillo and Grant Neiffer, I'm Collin Whitchurch. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast, and good luck with all your bets.